Hello.
Good morning.
Happy Thursday. This week we have coffee with Panda, as usual. And we're going to be talking about identity and kind of the breadcrumb trails of what led you to being who you are. It's something that I've been doing a deep dive on as I've been writing one of my books. And I'm going to angle this up so it's away, but I think we need a little more light. A little bit. Okay. Just a teensy. One of the things that led me to do this was I have a friend of mine here locally in Berea, Allie Blair, who's the co-owner of Rebel, which if you're in the local area, you want to hit them up. They're a lot of fun. They have open mic and they have some other stuff going on. Free concerts, paid concerts, all the things. They've been instrumental in getting us Levitt Amp music festivals and the food truck stuff and all sorts of stuff. But Allie has this thing where when we all meet together, she wants you to introduce yourself as who you be. So who you be is not what you do for a living. It's not necessarily the things that make you who you are. It's mother, sister, aunt, artist, that kind of thing. But it's more on a personal level as to who you are. And around the same time, I'd seen something on identity, and it was all the things that shaped you and the breadcrumb trail, essentially, of what influenced you early on to be who you are now. Team that with Sako Tumi's question on the Sako and the Moon podcast of who is Renmeleon and who is Rhea and what's the separation. And I realized I didn't really have one. I am Renmeleon. It's a nickname as much as it is my business. So I've been kind of deep diving and trying to figure out, okay, what influenced me to become Rhea, to become me, and what influenced my work and the things that I do now, which is a myriad of things. I'm a polymath and I work in several industries. So, yeah. So I think we're gonna hit Val up first. So what are some of the things that maybe influenced, how you read, what you read, the work that you do, Latin, gaming, writing?
Well, that would depend.
You start.
I don't know.
No pressure.
What part do you want to know where it comes from?
You.
Okay.
Early influences, like
early influences.
Your dad and books and comics and.
Okay. First comic book. There were two. The first was the first issue of WIldcats. Mm-hmm. I received it as a free comic book day, as a comic book club promotion they were running at my junior high school. And I went to a particular classroom at lunchtime where the event was being held. And that was my first comic book. That was also, little did I know, a Jim Lee comic book. Who is now pretty much the head of DC Comics today. He's like the executive director of DC now. But he is a penciler, an artist. And back in the early 2000s, I believe it was, he did a run of Batman called Hush. I picked up every single issue of that as it came out every month or every 3 weeks.
He's a huge Batman fan. Big time.
But the first issue, the first comic book that was gifted to me by my father when I was first interested in comic books was The Killing Joke, about the Joker and the story between Batman and Joker that is what I later was thought was a little adult, maybe for how old I was when I received it, but it's well written. It actually is humorous in places, although there are several places where it's very graphic. But that was my first comic book. And then by the time I was in college, I had collected all of Hush. I had at least half a box of Nothing But Batman, including Year One by Frank Miller, another very influential person and artist of specifically Batman, but a number of other things as well. So
how has that influenced how you look at life and the things that you enjoy doing? I know you do draw and you do maps, and
what I draw though isn't
in gaming
isn't
stuff.
really, it isn't superhero related though. What I draw are maps. From even before I was that age, I became interested in Dungeons and Dragons by being introduced to the game by my older brother's roommate. His name was Anthony. And I was over at our rental property, and I was doing some landscaping work. And my father wasn't going to be able to pick me up till later that night. So I got in touch with him, and he said, "Hey, go ahead and stay there and hang out until I can come get you." So Anthony pulled the D&D books off the shelf. At this time, it was first edition AD&D, which is still to this day probably my second favorite, but I tend to go back to it because of its simplicity. I really like second edition more than first, but it just expands on some of the rules that were a little more restrictive, things like level limits and things like that, that were a little bit harsh for first edition, I think. But I was 11 at the time. Within about 3 weeks, I think, I had the Unearthed Arcana that had come out that year. This would have been 1987, 89 actually. Unearthed Arcana had come out about a year before that in 86, or 2 years before in 86. And what I didn't realize at the time is it wasn't the player's handbook, but it had all of the material in it for you to make characters, because it was basically just an expansion of all of the letters and all of the material that had been submitted to Dragon Magazine,
which you do all the time. Character sheets, and that's his main go-to.
Character design is my jam, actually.
And he does it. He uses character sheets for his writing to develop his characters, which I had a character interview that I used to do, and I've since kind of adopted the character sheet model.
There are so many game character sheets that you could use depending on what information you want about a particular character. If your character, and not only that, but if your character is a fictional vampire character, you could use the White Wolf rules. There are other vampire games that you could play, but that is probably the most prominent. Werewolves, obviously. If you're writing cyberpunk, there's all kinds of cyberpunk games out there that you could use. And a lot of those sheets are very, very detailed. They have a lot of skill choices and things like that, things that your character would take because that's what they do.
Part of their backstory.
Part of their abilities, part of their training, their education. And that helps you kind of fill in where the character started, what the character's career was, maybe what its interests are, So I think that's a really good place to start, is what is this character interested in? What do they do? How were they trained?
I know a lot of that has had influence. A lot of that has had influence on him with, he teaches a 4-week class on Outschool, which we always have the link to that 4-week class on world building. And for 13 to 18?
13 to 18.
Yeah. Age 13 to 18. But I know that the comic books, the tabletop RPGs, and even the video gaming has been a heavy influence on that for him. So, and we're working on a book. We haven't got a whole lot on it yet, but it's coming. For me, with my branding on Twitch involves a moon rabbit, which moon rabbit is compassion. And I had to really do a deep dive and realize that rabbit showed up really early for me. So my mom and dad were divorced before I was a year old, but they stayed friends. And he only ever, the first time I asked about him, I was 3 years old. Mom brought him over for dinner. And he brought me a stuffed animal. It was the only stuffed animal he had ever given me. He passed away in 89 at Christmas, which is a whole nother podcast. Major soap opera. And I still have this guy after 53 years. So this is, he never got a name. I don't think I ever named him. And which is kind of sad, but this little guy with he's not meant to be Peter Rabbit. He's not meant to be anything that I know of. He's just a rabbit. Has no tail for some reason. And it's not that it fell off or anything. He just never had one. And so he is 53 years old. Because I am 56 now, 57 this year. And he, like my dad, had major influence on me. I'm a Christian-based pagan, and a lot of it has to do with my mom and dad. My dad specifically, and because he was more into the metaphysical and that kind of thing. My mom and I lived on our own for a long time, and then when I was about 8, because she worked like 2-3 jobs to support us, so single mom. And when I was about 8, we got a house, and we were there for probably about a year or 2 years. And then, hey, Lacey, good morning.
Good morning.
And then when I was 8, we moved into a house at my grandparents' probably when I was 9 or 10, built onto the back of our house and moved in. So my grandparents were helping my mom was helping them. And so we, shared the house for forever until my grandfather passed, and then my mom and my grandmother moved when I got pregnant. So my grandmother was like, I'm never leaving this house. Oh, you're pregnant, let's go. I mean, she wanted to be close to us. So so they moved, and it was just, my grandparents were my day-to-day. And my grandfather worked. This'll tell you a lot about me, the way I am now. So Grandpa was pretty much a polymath too. Interested in a lot of different things. And he worked 3 jobs out of the house from home for Leisure Time RV, Citizen News, and the fairgrounds. So I grew up helping the carnies set up occasionally at the fairgrounds. And anytime the Central Florida Fair came around, it was he gave me 2 10-day passes and a stack of single day, passes. So everybody and their mother at school was my best friend for those 2-3 weeks. But he did like the layout maps for the RV shows. He did sales for the fair, and for Citizen News, he did their advertising. So I learned basically whatever he was doing. I did business letters for him on the typewriter with carbon paper. Absolutely adored that typewriter, like forever. And it was a Remington or a Royal. I want to say it was a Remington, but and I don't know if I have any photos of it. I really don't think I do, but unfortunately when he died, my grandmother, being the practical woman she was, threw it out, which was heart-wrenching, because when I was little, I had taken some pink nail polish and put a little thing on the back of it to claim it, because my grandfather had said that it would be mine someday. So there's a typewriter, hopefully rescued somewhere or in a landfill, with a little thing of pink nail polish on it. But I used to draw the maps for him. I used to help him with, oh gosh, what is that stuff? The glue with you unscrew it and pull it out, and it's got a brush on it.
Rubber cement.
Rubber cement. Smelled horrible.
Oh yeah.
Any kind of brain damage that I may have from when I was a child is probably directly related to inhaling rubber cement. Kidding. But all the things that I do now lead back to my grandfather, lead back to my mom and my grandmother and my aunt and my cousins and their work ethic. Because my aunt worked for 60 years at one place. My mom worked for the airlines, although she would work for them and then they would get bought out by another airline. So she was with that airline, and then she did reservations. And I ended up eventually going into, worked for Stanford International Airport, passenger service office there. We did all the UK charter flights and that kind of thing. And I played liaison with security, but it was just, there's so much that looking back now, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That's where that came from. Moon Rabbit specifically we went to Epcot, and Japan had a Moon Rabbit exhibit, which I have photos somewhere, but absolutely fell in love with Moon Rabbit. And Moon Rabbit is compassion, and that's a lot of what I do. I try to have some kind of educational angle, some kind of charitable angle to, any project that I do. Like $3 Squirrel is, the EPUBs for that in the shop are $5, and $3 of it goes to International Book Project here in Lexington, which they fill cargo containers and ship books all over the world.
Yeah, they're a great group.
Really, really cool group. Every December we do their Sip and Shop show, which we love. But they have a bookstore the hardcovers are $5 and the paperbacks are $3, and they always have really good stuff. So, in fact, I came home with a bunch of them last time. Yeah. But with the separation from Renmeleon, that was a little harder. Renmeleon is so intrinsic to who I am that it's hard to separate. And this year, with getting back on the 12-week year, one of the things that I've been scheduling is actual reading time, solidifying my office hours, and sticking to them is a little harder because I tend to work at night more. But that's not like public office hours. Like clients have a, certain cutoff. I mean, they can message me anytime, but whether or not they get an answer is going to be dependent on, how late they message me. But it's, putting those things in place to have a separation. Anything I post, all my socials, everything is under Renmeleon. That's why it's hard to separate. And I don't want to have to manage more stuff because I already have the publishing company. I already have the magazine. I already have, the rubber stamp company at some point this year, the, print on demand stuff, and just all the things, Two Crows. So trying to make that stuff multitask for me versus me multitasking. I still multitask, but nowhere near the level that I used to, because a lot of stuff is condensed now. And I remember my grandfather, I wish I knew what his organizational system was, if he had one. I remember him using yellow notepads, which I have and love. They feel like the more serious projects if it's on legal. I don't know why. Probably because of him. But I remember him, a ruler, a ballpoint pen, and a pencil, and he would carve the pencil off. So they always had these wonky edges. My pencils, especially for art, have the longer shape to them. And I actually have an electric sharpener that does the longer shape because that's how my grandfather's looked. I clued into that. And my grandmother was very practical, very outgoing. They golfed, they played poker. They had a poker game that ran for like 50 years, something like that. You don't want to play me cards because I grew up around it. That was our thing. And when they moved in, we played cards every night after dinner. So from when I was 8 until I was 18, 10 years of poker playing. I remember when they had an apartment, though, is I would sit under, I would help them get the poker table out. They had this big octagon shaped poker table, and they would roll it. We'd roll it down the hall. That was my job. Uncle taught me how to card count in poker. Oh no. Leave it to uncles to give us the bad habits. Mine was puzzles. But with the poker stuff, I was playing with the chips under the table or with extra set of cards. And then I was sitting on my grandmother's lap and throwing in chips for her. And then eventually, I would get to set in on a game. But I would help make sandwiches. I would make cookies, that kind of thing. I still have, and I keep it on my desk, one of their decks. So I play solitaire, which was my grandmother's thing. It was very
she had one really strange rule that I've never people.
I mess with people because I deal this way instead of this way, for one thing. But you have to have all the kings out before you can have an empty space in a row. So if you get a card that you can play somewhere else, unless you have all 4 kings out, you can't do it. And it makes it really hard. But it makes me rethink and rework the cards because you can do that. But thank you, Grandma. So this is a big thing for if I really need to clear my head. There's truth in the numbers. I heard somebody say a long time ago. Truth in the cards, basically that it's, these are constant. These aren't going to change. So these are something you don't have to think about, really. It's kind of a no-brainer for me to sit and play solitaire. But cards was definitely them and my mom. Mom was food fights and cutthroat Monopoly and
I learned
that kind of thing.
I learned a type of solitaire that's
that's recent. Yeah,
this is recent. I found a game. Someone was doing a walkthrough on YouTube for how to play it. That is basically the dungeon running with cards. So you take one deck of cards and
I'll link it.
It's called Scoundrel. There's probably several people who have kind of demoed it on YouTube. But the gist is you have each of the suit types is something different. So you have your diamonds are weapons. So they're in different numerical values, which means they're stronger. They can, deal with more monster numbers. All black cards are monsters. All hearts are health potions. So you go through the deck, and when you draw a diamond, you can put that up here in front of you and use it as a weapon. And then any of black cards that you pull are monsters up to a value of, I believe it's 13.
So whichever greater value is the one that wins.
You pull all of the face cards out that are red, including I believe it's the aces, and all of the face cards that are red. And so, any of the hearts and any of the diamonds, because they want you to try to beat all of the monster numerical values with only the numerical values of red cards. That's the challenge. Is if you pull a king of spades and you've got, I don't know, a 9 of diamonds there for your weapon, you're going to take some damage. You use a d20 and you keep track of your health. You start with 20 health. And the health potions add points back to that up to a maximum of 20. So I've been playing that, and it's actually a lot of fun, and it's a game you just play by yourself. But it's called Scoundrel.
It's I'll link below. I love cards. I have so much fun with cards and playing. When I worked the bar and I was a bartender and I ran this place in Ocala, inadvertently ended up running it. There was a couple of guys that came in the morning. We had a snooker table, so we had all the old guys come in for coffee and play snooker in the morning. And one of the guys would sit at the bar and teach me card games. King's Corner or Kings in the Corner is one of my favorite, and I need to relearn it so that I can teach Val, because it's a lot of fun. But I also knew from my grandmother there's like over 50 versions of solitaire that you can play too. But so cards have had an influence, and a big thing with me is creating my own decks. So yay technology, I have a Go Fish deck, a Lenormand deck, a Stegs and Serato deck, and a Hello Rabbit deck. And I'll link below because there is a shop that you can buy them from, but they're not funded yet. I'm working on getting those funded this year through Kickstarter. I have a first Kickstarter getting ready to go up for the magazine, and then Go Fish is next, or possibly Stegs and Serato. I think I'm going to do Go Fish first. But I have to run the campaign for a month and then it pays out the next month. So I can only do one every 2 months, something like that. Maybe every 3, but I don't want to put multiple decks up and have people go, oh, I want this one, but I can't afford to do this one too. So I want to stagger them a little. Or just get sponsors. Sponsors, contact me. The decks are done. I just need to fund them. But my uncle, puzzles. Anytime I went to my aunt's, he would buy these little wooden metal puzzles that you see like in Cracker Barrel and a bunch of other places that have them. You can get them online too, but he was always getting the puzzles specifically for when I visited, and would have me sit and do them because his kids were, grown. My cousins were grown. I loved a game called Aggravation and Piss Off, taught me by old ladies in my congregation growing up. It was a fun game, rather like playing War with multiple decks. Oh wow.
We used to play War when I was a kid.
Aggravation and Piss Off. Yeah, we did War. Mom and I had this little deck, and I wish I could find it. It was called Slap Happy, but it was this little tiny version of it. And it was, she'd get in, she was cutthroat with it, and she would just start laughing and not be able to stop. She'd get punchy. And it was total giggle fest, but it was one of those things where you put the cards down really fast, and then if Happy the Clown, which was a clown, but Happy the Clown popped up, you had to slap it, and that way you got all the cards that were in the deck. So whoever ended up with the most cards from slapping this damn clown.
Kind of like Slapjack.
Yeah. And I'll have to see if I can find an old copy of it. And I have another one that we did. I have my original battleship, the paper battleship. I have the cards, and it still has some of our score sheets in it, which is really cool. And then I have a couple of other vintage ones that I'd like to actually play. The vintage air aviation wings. Yeah, I've got a couple of games out there in the other room, but I've found them at like Peddler Mall or something like that, where I love old vintage. Yep. But games and board games and gaming and cards, that's all stuff I design now, and that's all stuff that has been intrinsic to my growing up, my daughter's growing up, tabletop and all that. So I'm working on a module, my daughter's working on a module, and hopefully at some point this year we'll actually get to run it on Dirty 20, or her channel on Twitch. We're not sure, but just all these things had so much influence on me personally that now I create that kind of stuff. And I mentor other people on creating stuff too. Like I'm working on a tarot deck and a coffee table book with one person, that hopefully will have another, have more projects coming out. Books I voraciously read when I was a kid. Mom would read to me when she could, because she was exhausted most of the time, but she'd still, anything I needed or wanted, or I was pretty spoiled. And so now I'm trying to, take care of her now. She's 92, still kicking. My grandmother was 103 when she passed, and my grandfather was 95. So I'm hoping to have her around for a while longer. I want to have her in the storefront because she's a caregiver at heart, and with nobody to give right now. And so I'd love to have her as a hostess at Two Crows, so she can, check on people and see if they need things, and, mess with the shelves and do that kind of thing. She would love that. So, So fingers crossed on getting the storefront soon and her being able to, and it would help her too. So keep her busy and, give her something to look forward to. But she kept me in art books. Ed Emberley was one of the first ones that I remember, which his books, you'll see like across the page, there's a line of green squares. And then on the first green square, there's one little line. And then there's another little line that goes with it. And by the time you get over here, there's like a lion or some type of animal. So it wasn't necessarily breaking everything down into shapes. That is another book that my mom had gotten me that kind of taught me how to do that. Mm-hmm. But the Ed Emberley stuff was simplifying and line art and, making things, step by step and easy, and huge help for me. I've got one book on him that's like a biography that I'll share a link to that I happened to find in a Paddler Mall. I got all excited. And I still have the art book that my mom had given me. Fairy lore, there was a guy that was a friend of my mom's. They weren't dating or anything. I think it was a coworker or just a friend. And he used to feed me books on Native American lore and fairy lore. And I have a couple of books that are like first edition stuff that unfortunately I wrote my name in when I was little, when I was younger. But writing and all the stuff that I do now, screenwriting, books, games, everything can be traced back to, my grandparents, my mom's friend, my mom. And it just, like I said, Renmeleon is me as much as Rhea is. So I don't know that I'll ever have any more separation than that, but I know we're working on gaming stuff and some stuff too. So, but I would love to hear in the comments afterwards, what is it that helped shape you and into the things that you do, whether it's work related or whether it's, just you as a person. And if you do work like freelance full time or from home, or you have a business that's just very ingrained in who you are, where is the separation for you? Because we all need downtime. And like I said, that's something I'm scheduling in with reading and just doing art for me.
I will just mention real quick, because I've been reading quite a bit. Picked up a couple of books at the Sip and Shop, and I started reading the first book in the series. S. Thomas Russell is the author. It's basically Napoleonic naval warfare, fictional stories about massive sailing ships and the Napoleonic War, 1793 time period. I've been reading naval fiction recently, and the book is called, what was it? It's the first book in that series. I can't remember now.
I'll link it.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head. It's gone. I can't remember.
We'll look at it. I'll look it up and I'll
put the author's S. Thomas Russell. He's got 4 books out. I'm reading the first one currently. I'm 4 chapters into it, and it seems well paced. It's interesting so far. I mean, as far as historical fiction, naval warfare goes. So
reading is reading.
So
pick a topic.
Yeah, I've
We're
read
both history nerds, so
I've read the first 45 pages of the book in 2 short sittings. So yeah, that for me is quick. So
my mom, Uncle George, and Granny Poke, along with my great grandfather, were huge influences for me. That's cool. You got to know your great grandfather. Issa was 6 when my grandmother passed. She never got to meet my grandfather, though, unfortunately. I would have loved to have hooked Val and my grandfather up. I think they probably would have raided each other's closets. Or Val would have been raiding his closet. But yeah, very cool. If y'all want to, I'll link it, the Discord. If anybody wants to continue the discussion in Discord, we can do that. But for now, we're going on 40 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and head out. But yeah, comment if you want to share something about your identity and what made you you, your personal identity, your work identity, that kind of thing. And we will be back next Thursday. I am not going to be streaming the whole 2 hours on Saturday. I am going to go ahead and stream for an hour from noon to 1, because we've got a writer's thing going on at 1:30. So, but I will pop in and do art for an hour on Saturday at noon Eastern Standard. And then my the regular schedule Monday and Wednesday and Saturday next week. So, and Thursday for this. So, but have a great rest of your weekend. Stay well, stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands.
Stay warm. It's
and stay
freezing
warm.
Out there.
Yeah.
At least it is here. It's like 20 degrees outside.
I don't know
right
when
now.
we're supposed to get snow again, but and I have a client's books coming in on Friday. So hopefully on Sunday we will have a book launch. So, but bye. Love y'all. Stay well.